Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rob Shmuel, Rabbi Stephen, here with you with this week's portion. And this week we get a double portion, and this double portion finishes up the book of Numbers. So we are one more book left after this, and you know, the ninth of Av is going to soon be upon us. And for me, the ninth of Av is fairly special because this was kind of a 1 year Hebrew calendar anniversary for me, as when I started with my wonderful new family here at Temple Shalom of Ontario. So, and it'll be the same as last year. We're just going to get with the ritual committee. We'll do some planning. We'll have an evening service like we did last year. Yes, it is another fast. This is the ninth of Av is one of the two full-on fasts. That is from sundown to sundown. And I'll discuss it more as we get there, but I just kind of want to let you know it's coming upon us. This week is also Shabbat Rosh Chodesh, so it is the new month of Av. So we're getting to the end of the year. We have Av, we have Elul, and then Tishrei, and that's Rosh Hashanah. So we have it's 2 months left for the new year. So time goes fast. Okay, so we have, like I said, the double portion that takes us to the end of the book of Numbers, or Bamidbar. The Hebrew translation is in the wilderness. And it starts off talking about vows, nederim, and oaths, Israel. So, what is the difference between a vow and an oath? And I will tell you, it has taken me a long time to wrap my head around what's the differences. So, what a vow basically does is you are either consecrating something to Hashem or you are denying something to yourself. Now, of course, the reason for this is you're doing it out of gratitude. Maybe, you've escaped a life-threatening injury or illness or a situation. Maybe your luck has changed and you want to show your gratitude with a very substantial uh, gosh, I get tongue tied sometimes. The foils of old age, but you want to make a gesture. You want to make a very important gesture. And what a vow does when you're taking a vow or a neder, you are in a sense taking on a new commandment. You're adding commandments. And the rabbi said that this was so serious. In Judaism, your word is your bond. You know, written contracts didn't come into the modern age when paper was plentiful. There wasn't a lot of paper back then, so you said something, you carried it out. It's that simple. You were good for your word. So it was a very serious thing. And again, you're either saying, I'm going to take this object and give it to God, or what I'm going to do is I'm going to deny myself, maybe some type of pleasure, maybe to atone for something, maybe distress, something like that. Now, an oath, by contrast, and you might have seen the word Shavuot. Shavuot sounds a lot like Shavua or seven, or Shavuot, which is our holiday. But the oath is saying that you're going to do something or you're going to abstain from something. So the difference between a vow and an oath is that in a vow, it's about the object. Okay, so I don't know, I'm not going to use my cell phone for a week. That's a vow. A very important vow. Like to see somebody under the age of 21 or even under the age of 100 do that, right? We all live with our cell phones. And an oath means that I'm going to go ahead and do something. So I'm going to attend services, 3 times a day for the next month. Gratitude, that type of thing. So again, it's the difference between a vow is about an object, and an oath is about an action. And again, your word was your bond. It was like taking on an additional command. So next, we have the idea that the Israel is going to defeat the Midianites. This is always an interesting topic in our Torah studies and in our discussions about Torah. So in our last portion, there was a new commandment to harass the Midianites, to Ruret the Midianite. And this is because the Midianites joined very quickly with Balaam to try and seduce the Israelites into immorality. So now Moses is told, put together an army, 1,000 men from each tribe. And by the way, Pinchas now becomes the battle priest. He's kind of like an army's first chaplain. And he takes trumpets and certain accoutrements with him, to help inspire Israel. And they go off and they defeat Midian. And the terms are very, very severe, especially by our standard. They are told to kill the men, the women, most of the kids, but the young girls can stay free. They can use them as slaves. Yes, very, very brutal. By our standards, very barbaric. So why would they go to those extremes? Let's talk about this a little bit because it's a very inflammatory topic and it needs to be understood. Consider the fact that these people were all evil. Now I say that, okay, and maybe that's you thinking, well, gee, Rob Shmuel, that's kind of a rationalization if we ever heard one. Okay, so and let's get into a touchy area. We are familiar with certain wars that have occurred in our time where it wasn't just man versus man. You would think that in a war, the able bodied men went out and they met each other on the battlefield. And yes, it was brutal, but it was the men. We are seeing more and more women, like suicide bombers. Some of them are women. Kids are becoming soldiers. You had child soldiers in Africa. You have some terrorists recruiting kids. Uh, I believe that in some cases, in certain places in the country, certain crime fields, there are kids under the age of 18. And, what do you do? In Vietnam, it was very brutal. Our boys were over there and they turned around and it was a child of 3 or 4 or 5 holding a grenade or a gun. What do you do? Do you not do anything? Do you allow yourself to be killed because you don't want to take the life of a child? Or do you say, you know what, this is war, it's me or them, and you do what you got to do? It was brutal. And the point is that the women of Midian willingly participated in trying to cause the downfall of Israel by seducing them into immorality and idolatry, and thus leading for their defeat so the Midianite soldiers can come in and just clean it up. So I'm going to leave the thinking, the thoughts to you. Right? I can't tell you about your morality. I can only give you reasons and explanations and compare it to something we might have today. And I do this not making any type of judgment, but just trying to put what Israel was up against into perspective. A lot of these people had so little regard for human life, and this still exists today, that they didn't care how old, what gender, didn't matter. They wanted to win a war, do it for the sanctification of whatever deity, whatever pagan force they were trying to appease. Right? And again, by our standards, it's very barbaric, and it needs to be barbaric. For all we know, one of the reasons why that particular passage is in our Torah is so you will feel horrible about this. So that you will look at this and say, my gosh, how could we do this? And it will lead you to morality, to look at the consequences of a society that has no regard for human life in any situation. Let's face it, the Torah is one big, on one level, it's one big didactic. It tells us how to act, and it gives us examples of what happens when you do and the consequences of when you don't. Okay, let's leave that alone and let's move on in the few minutes we have. One of the things I do want to mention, aside from the fact that the land's apportioned and they go in and they take the land and by lot it's apportioned, is we revisit the daughters of Zelophehad because the elders from the tribe of Manasseh came and said, well, what if one of these 5 women who have inherited land marry outside their tribe? Then the land passes outside of the tribe of Manasseh. And in the 50th year, Jubilee, the land does not revert back to the original tribe if it was because of marriage. This is only if a person has to go into debt. This is not another situation. So under the circumstance, the land would not come back to the tribe. So the agreement is that the daughters of Zelophehad, in return for being heiresses of their father's land, because there were no sons, would marry within their tribe. And the Midrash says that they all did it. All five of them had no problem. They married cousins, which people did back then, and the land stayed inside the tribe. It was passed down, from sons after that. Okay, so Shabbat Shalom. We'll have probably Tuesday evening at our Torah study. We'll have a lot of fodder for thought. And it's good. It's a good discussion. I like to have discussions. I want to make sure that people understand. So Shabbat Shalom. Let's everybody keep cool. The weather's getting a little hot. And thank you again for tuning in and listening. And again, I just want to reiterate, I love the fact that I'm coming up to my year-long Hebrew anniversary of being year-round.